your brain, which is where you've become located or think that's who you are, is perceiving some kind of threat. And that's really what it comes down to, right? Like, because the primordial imperative of any organism is to survive. So wherever you perceive the antithesis of that, you're going to go into fight or flight, right? In this case, it's not like my actual life is in threat. It's my opinion. Like, people, if you really want to break it down to the most simplest terms, who we are as a person, a persona, is literally a walking conversation. It's just that people think they are their conversation, so they'll defend it. Like, you know, without getting into politics or religion, tend to be the most inflammatory opinions, right? Where most people have the most conflict, because it's so rooted over many decades and generations that people think that they are a particular party or they are a particular religion, which is completely fallacious. I'm not going to deny somebody having that illusion, but it's not a truth. No one on the planet is Christian. If you subscribe to Christianity as a way of life or a particular dogma or belief system, fine. But for most people, it's not even a conscious thought. It's something you inherited by virtue of the fact that your parents were that. Doesn't make any of it wrong, but you start to realize the illusory nature of what it is to think that we are what we believe. No, it's a conversation. You're a walking conversation. Now, what happens if you walk into somebody who has a very similar conversation, like, oh, Joe, he's awesome. Joe's not awesome. He's not. He just has a conversation that you happen to find some sense of alignment with, and so therefore there's a degree of acceptance. But then, you know, he meets Sally, and Sally's a pain in the ass. Like, she's a complete bitch. No, she's not either. She just has a particular conversation whose resonance isn't so in alignment with your opinion, and so you find conflict. But beyond all of that, you know, it's like, again, this just came to me. I haven't had this quote for a long time, but everybody loves everybody. It's just most people don't realize that. Right? What does that point to? The fact that beyond the conversation and the opinion, which is invariably inherited, the language that uses us, is just the same essence of what it is to be a being that is having a human experience. It's in the human misidentification where the narratives, which are based in insecurity, inadequacy, and scarcity, when we find harmony or simpatico with somebody else's opinion, that's a friend, that's a lover, someone we end up with. Versus, no, it's just another being walking around with a conversation that you have some disagreement with. But that doesn't mean just because you have a differing perspective that you have to have hatred or harm towards that person. So the opportunity to go back to your question is to recognize where you're being triggered. You're only being triggered by a perspective. And it's only a perspective that therefore is creating the illusion of some sense of threat that puts you into sympathetic mode or fight or flight, which actually is really you're harming yourself. Because you're under the impression that because somebody thinks differently, says something differently, sees differently, that you're now less safe in the world. And that gives you your physiology, the dumping of cortisol, epinephrine, adrenaline, that is now going to cascade through your entire tissue system, which is the acceleration of disease and aging. But you're under the impression it's because so-and-so over there has got a different way of looking at the world. So it's when you really break it down, it's quite asinine, right? Like, unless it's actually a physical threat. If someone's coming at you with a knife or pointing a gun at you, fine, okay, you know, do everything you can to mitigate any harm. But for the most part, all that's being hurt and threatened is a perspective. And when people really get that, it's so disarming both for oneself and then the other person, because can you listen to somebody say something without being triggered? Yeah. Now, if you can't, then I would investigate the fact that you've become completely misidentified with your perspective as though that's the only way you're going to survive, as that's your truth, right? And again, I tell people that, like, everything's real. It's just nothing's true.